Hello, everyone, and welcome, welcome, welcome. You are tuned in to our latest edition of Coffee with the Cane, brought to you by the University of Miami Alumni Association. I'm, of course, your host, Winston Warrior. I'm a lecturer in the School of Communication and Executive Director in Strategic Communication and Marketing for the School of Education and Human Development. Say that 2 times and I'll give you an A. So anyway, I am joined by Kelsey DeSantis, and we'll tell you a little bit more about Kelsey in a second. So what I want you to do is to remember to give us some shout outs. First of all, shout out to all the alumni who are joining us today. And if you want to give Kelsey a shout out or you want to ask her a question, then please use the comment section. We also want you to throw up your virtual U's, the emoji. So throw those up in the comment section. Hey, there's Kelsey.
Gotta throw it.
So you got to throw those U's up in the comment section so that we can see you. And also, again, if you have a question for Kelsey, as we're having this great conversation, then please put those in the comments. So Kelsey, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you, Winston. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm so excited to have Coffee with the Cane, and it's a pleasure to be interviewed by you. I'm doing really well. Thank you for having me.
You're so sweet. So listen, what's in your cup? Tell me, what do you have in your coffee cup?
Yeah, so I actually, here's my Camp David cup. Okay. I got Invader Coffee, which is actually a veteran-owned and operated company. My friend Wes owns it, really great guy, and I tend to support veteran-owned coffee companies and companies in general. So Invader Coffee, and a lot of the stuff that I mentioned will actually be in the comments. So if you want to check out some of these companies, please do.
That's what's up. So I have last time I had, so this time I have tea, and so maybe one of these days I'll have extra coffee in my cup, right? But
very nice. No, I believe in tea drinking too. Let me be real. Self-care. Tea is self-care for sure.
You know what I mean? So I hope you all who are joining us have your cup and that you are joining us and ready to go. So let's start off with you telling me, so how did you get connected to the U? Talk about that connection. How did it start?
Yeah, sure. So I got out of the Marine Corps in the beginning of 2012, and I went back home to California. I was looking for both a place where I could train out of and compete out of, and somewhere to go to school. And I ended up going to Pasadena City College, which I really enjoyed. There was a Veterans Resource Center there and program, and I just loved being a part of it. But I couldn't find a home gym, and I had a contact in South Florida with American Top Team, and they invited me out. And I was like, oh, this is so cool, because I've always loved the University in Miami. And I assumed I was going to try to get in to get my undergraduate with the U. It ended up not working out for my undergraduate. I ended up going to NSU, which I very much so enjoyed and loved. But it's funny how sometimes things circle back in your life, and I was able to, to do my graduate studies in the School of Communications at the University of Miami, a School of Communication. So it was an honor and a privilege to even be considered and to get in. And that's my affinity for the U continues. So
yeah, I love it. And it continues with me too. So, let me take a step back, because people are like, tell us about Kelsey. So Kelsey, for those people who don't know you, you're a Marine vet, you're a mixed martial artist pro. You're a beauty pageant contestant in the Ms. Veteran America pageant, where you displayed your MMA and boxing skills. There's so much to unpack about you, but let's start with something else that's very close to your heart. Since we're approaching Memorial Day, we're observing Memorial Day. Tell us, what made you decide that you wanted to have a life of service for our country?
Absolutely. So I was born and raised in Southern California, and a big part of my life was my Uncle Rock, and he was a Marine Corps veteran, Vietnam era. And he actually was one of my mom's friends. So he wasn't a blood relative, but he was like a father to me. And he taught me so many different things about discipline and respect and humility and character and all these things. And if it wasn't for him, I definitely wouldn't be who I am today. And when I was younger, I wasn't really the best student, and I was looking for other options. I was going to have to work 2 jobs to go to college, and I was looking into the armed forces. I originally was looking into the Navy, And then my brother had signed up for the Marine Corps. My brother's recruiter approached me and said, hey, why don't you join the Marine Corps? And I thought he was making fun of me because I did fight training at the time. I thought I had no idea there was women Marines. I had no clue. And so I thought he was kind of like, saying like, you look, or like, you're strong like a guy, you know what I mean? Join the Marine Corps. I thought it was a joke. And he was like, no, we have like, 5% is female or something, maybe even smaller at that time. And I was like, okay, so this is really interesting. And so my whole reason for joining the service was I really wanted to find more people that help define selflessness. And for me, that was like my Uncle Rock. Like, he had no obligation to me or my brother to take care of us, but he did. And I looked up to him, and I still do. And then when I joined the Marine Corps, I found more people like that. And that's what I was looking for. And I found I wanted to be a part of something greater than myself. And I really found that in the military.
That's wonderful. Wonderful story. Yeah. So you aren't afraid to push the envelope. We know from your background. A little birdie told me that you actually invited Justin Timberlake to the Marine Corps ball. I mean,
I know. Can you believe that?
Did he actually come? I mean, what's up?
He totally did. And let me tell you, he's definitely suave. Like, he is definition of dapper for sure. He's a great, great, great guy. I think actually we're due for a reunion here because that was in 2011. So, 2021 is coming up, and it would be great to do some fun stuff with him again and to have a reunion. He's just an incredible person. I was impressed, but I mean, there was so many things that led up to how that went down. And I think I'm going to get into the story here in a little bit because it has to do with why I was interested in the field of communications, actually.
Okay. So let's hold it. But
for sure.
We're going to put a pin there because we want to get this story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But hands down, he's super rad. He has a huge heart. And I was just extremely impressed because I wasn't necessarily an NSYNC fan. I liked more of the Saturday Night Live funny stuff. Yeah. But after that, I was like, I mean, it's hard not to love the guy. He's incredible.
So we'll touch on that. So don't forget. So we'll come back to it.
For sure.
So we're still on this journey with you in the military and the Miss Veteran America pageant. I mean, talk to me about that.
Yeah. So after I left the Marine Corps, I was really enthusiastic about going to school, doing professional fighting, and I started to find out about veteran affairs, so to speak. And it came to my awareness and my knowledge that veteran suicide and veteran homelessness is very prevalent in our community. And so I started to ask myself these questions as to why, like the obvious questions in terms of transitioning, and it's a hard transition and things like that, but I wanted to know more. And so I started to research organizations. I started to research all different kinds of things in terms of the veteran space. And I came across, I think somebody actually they said, you should run for Miss Veteran of America. And I was like, what is this? So I started looking this, and I'm kind of the opposite as you would think is maybe someone who would run in a pageant. It's not technically a pageant, it's a competition. And the best part about it is that they raise funds for homeless women veterans. And I was sold. So as soon as I found that out, and the mission and the organization, and Jazz Booth created it, I was just like, okay, done. Like, I'm doing this because I wanted to be a part of any movement, especially as a woman, and to realize that homeless women veterans is a pretty big demographic. I was just completely sold in terms of to figuring out how I can be a part of it. And I wanted to run. And it's so funny because when we did the initial session of to see if they move on to the finals, they have 25 finalists. And before that, I didn't know at the time, but I was actually pregnant with my daughter. And so I found out a month or two later, I was like, oh my gosh. And I called Jazz, and she was like, that's okay. We're women, girl. There's another girl that's pregnant too. I was like, okay, let's do this thing. You know what I mean? She was like, this is a different kind of pageant. So me, and there was one other contestant that made it to the 25 finalists. We were both 8 months pregnant.
Oh, wow.
I had these heels on, and thank goodness one of my sisters who I mean, there's tons of women that I have huge respect for that I met, the finalists. And she looks at me during, during the last ceremony. She goes, "Are you okay in those heels?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty good. Thanks for looking out," because man, it was definitely a trip, but it was so much fun. And it was a pleasure to be involved with them. And I ended up receiving the award for Iron Woman. I think it's Iron Woman of the group. So that was pretty cool. They do like different things. Like there's Miss Veteran gets the main thing, and then they have different awards and stuff. So it was an honor and a privilege to be a part of that.
So you were top, like you said, the top 25, and you won the Iron Award. So what does that Iron Award represent? I mean, what is?
So basically it's like physically fit, you know, and things like that, which makes sense because I think even though I was pregnant, I like for my talent, I was boxing. So I was doing some pad work, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It makes sense. I mean,
Yeah.
you and Serena Williams, I mean, just defining what womanhood is like, you know, winning Australian Open while pregnant and then top 25 pregnant. I mean,
yeah, it was definitely a sight to see, but I loved every minute of it. And it was really cool to be amongst those women and to be a part of that.
I love it. So again, breaking barriers seems to be your thing. So we're just going to call you just breaking barriers. But anyway, so you talked about the small percentage of women that were in the Marine Corps, and the Smithsonian Magazine, in partnership with Stars and Stripes and the Schar School of Public Policy and Government at George Mason University, conducted a poll and found that 68.5% of those who serve or have served in the military say that they have had some type of discrimination, facing discrimination based on gender. So with that in mind, what do you do to fight gender bias in a space that, of course, doesn't have as many women in it?
Winston, I think that's a great question. First of all, I want to acknowledge that MST, which is military sexual trauma, is very prevalent among women in the military. Gender bias is very real, both in the military and outside of the military. It's not an argument of if it exists or not. It does exist in certain environments. And the way that I kind of managed it, or conceptually, my perception of gender bias is I try to think of it in a sense is that I don't fight it. But what I do is I stand against it. Let me explain what I mean. So from my early 20s and my time in the Marine Corps, I was constantly searching to become like the best version of myself, which is really what I believe to be a lifelong struggle. And sometimes, you know, life is like a roller coaster, and sometimes you're on a down slope before you get to an up. So for me, it's always been less about what people think of me or assume about me, and more about my performance and what I'm capable of. I've always been competitive, and I've never really thought of myself as being at a disadvantage, even when training alongside mostly men throughout my martial arts career and my time in the military. I just thought, I just see it as performance and as winning, really, you know what I mean, and giving my best. So that's kind of my perception. And so I think a lot of times that maybe I didn't even realize, or even if somebody was kind of had that mentality, I kind of block it out. Like it wouldn't, it's not going to prohibit me. In fact, it's going to motivate me to actually accomplish what it is that you think that I can't. And I've no doubt come across gender bias throughout my career, no doubt. And at times I've enjoyed breaking those walls down and actually enjoyed proving people wrong. But I'll tell you this, at the same time, I believe in the concept of being a quiet professional. And what that means is that, you know, your actions speak louder than your words, and it speaks volume about your character, and people see that, you know what I mean? And one thing I would do throughout my courses, when our instructor courses in the Marine Corps, the martial arts program that I taught at in Quantico, Virginia, is I wouldn't say anything. I was an instructor just like all the other men that I worked with, but I wouldn't say anything until we had our first week of training was done. And on that Friday, we would compete or fight our students. That Monday is when I would start teaching. Because it was I could just see it, you know, in people, in eyes and everything. It was a total different perception. And I was okay with that, because it is what it is. And you know, and sometimes like your actions speak louder than words. And so yeah, that's kind of my take on that. I think that most of us recognize gender bias among many other biases, and that they exist. And sometimes it can directly affect you, especially if that person is your boss or that person is in charge of you, which is extremely unfortunate. But sometimes you just got to hold on and keep being the best version of yourself, and then make your own circumstances change if your circumstance doesn't, so to speak. I number one, I very much so try to not make other people's issues my own problem. Like, what someone else thinks to me is none of my business, and it's not my problem. If you assume that I can't do anything or do something, that's your problem. It's not mine. It has nothing to do with me. And number two, I see problems such as gender bias as an opportunity to continue being the best version of myself. Knowing someone assumes I'm incapable of something that I'm passionate about, it usually motivates me to accomplish it even more so. Not just to prove them wrong, but to also try to reach my full potential and test myself to really see what I'm capable of. That's always been my thing.
I love it. I mean, it's
Thank
almost
you.
like, yeah, it's so eloquent and passionate. It's almost like you see it, but like you said, I'm not gonna fight you. I'm gonna show you.
Exactly.
You know, watch my smoke. Right?
Exactly.
Watch me show you. I love it. I love it. You know, we're having such a great conversation, and want to remind everyone who's listening to us and watching us, if you have a question for Kelsey, please put it in the comment section so that we can get that to her live while we're talking.
That'd be awesome.
That'd be awesome.
Pop those questions.
So speaking of, you breaking down those walls and breaking down these barriers, let's talk about your passion around MMA. That's the mixed martial arts world. This industry is booming. I mean, last year, I believe, I have this number right, the industry made $5 billion with a B, billion in total revenue, and I believe have over 80,000 people active. So again, breaking down the barriers, how did you get involved with mixed martial arts?
Okay, so another great question. The first thing I want to say is I intrinsically believe that wholeheartedly, every single person has the right to protect themselves, and we should promote that. As a child, I definitely didn't grow up in the suburbs, and I kind of had a hard upbringing. We grew up in the projects. My mom was a single mom. She worked like 7 days a week, always trying to take care of 2 kids. And it was definitely a challenge for me and my brother growing up. And so it was kind of always this philosophy of like, my mom would teach us, like, you got to check your six, what we say in the military, like you got to, yeah, exactly. Like you got to be looking around, like you have to have situational awareness because you never know. And I think those are good principles of life. Like, it's unfortunate that we have to, in a sense, but it's just a fact of the matter. It doesn't matter in what area you're, if you're in a bad area or if you're in a rich area. The fact of the matter is you have to have situational awareness, and you have the right to protect yourself. And so my mom taught me that very young. And then when I was about like 15, 16 years old, one of my friends started doing kickboxing. And I was like, kickboxing? Like, where are you kickboxing? We're in a small desert town. There's like nothing to do. I'm like, where are you kickboxing at? So I went to this gym. It was like a hole in the wall gym, 800 square feet. And like for the first like month, all my coach made me do just jump rope and throw jabs. And then when I finally was able to get in the ring, I got pretty beat up, and I just kept coming back because I was like, I want to get better at this. I have to get better at this. And honestly, I'd say it became my healthy emotional and physical outlet. I struggled with a lot of things growing up in terms of not having resources, so to speak, and I wasn't at all very good at academics. Education I very struggled with, and that's another reason why I wanted to go in the communications field, because it was a direct conflict, so to speak, with something that I've always struggled with. I wasn't ever, I could barely read. I could do, the Marine Corps taught me how to do military writing and report writing, and I could do that, but I was never an academic, and it was a huge struggle for me. I never imagined myself getting a master's degree. So I kind of skipped around there, but I physically, I was much more gifted physically. And it became just such an addiction for me, a really healthy addiction. And so I got better and better. And my first fight ever, I got my face beat in.
So you went from like hobby, desert town, trying to find something to channel this wonderful energy you had to like a professional MMA fighter. Like how does that happen? Like you just are so
okay, so here's how it goes. And we were talking before the call about, you know, successful people. If you talk to successful entrepreneurs and successful business people, a lot of them will tell you that it wasn't on the first try. It's rarely on the first try. You know, there's a lot of failure and self-growth. Thank you, preach. There's a lot, like you learn so much through your failures. And what would success be without failure? Yep. And my first ever fight, I thought for sure, I didn't want to come out the second round. The second round, I was telling my corner, like, I don't know about this. And they were like, it's too late. Like, you got one more round. You know what I mean? And I'm thinking, oh my God, this girl's going to knock me out this round. Thank God she didn't. But my uncle afterward, he was like, you know what? Like, you play volleyball, like maybe you do something like that. Like maybe fighting isn't for you, you know? And I was like thinking to myself, like, no, like, regardless if it's not for me, I'm not going to accept this failure. I'm going to learn from it. And so what I did is I competed 2 more times and I won those. And then I ended up rematching this girl who beat me right before I joined the Marine Corps. And I ended up winning, which was pretty incredible. Bravo. And they offered me, she had a pro Thai fight that she pulled out of after our fight. And they offered me her pro fight. But the thing was, I was supposed to leave for the Marine Corps in 2 weeks. And that was a really like hard decision to make. And I thought to myself, going back to your first question, I thought to myself, if I don't do this now, chances are that I won't. And secondly, do I want to do something? I mean, fighting is wonderful in terms for me, but do I want to do something for me, or do I want to be a part of something I feel like is greater than myself? And that's what I chose, because I felt I didn't want that opportunity to pass me by. And I felt it was a little bit more purpose driven for me. And I think I was right. So that's how it all came about.
And I'm sure you're still active now. I mean, I'm sure it's still a passion, right?
Oh my God. I love it. And it's an honor and a privilege to work with. I work with Amanda Nunes. She's the champ. She's the 135 and 145 women's champion in the UFC. And she asked me to help with the Cyborg fight when she fought Cyborg. And everyone thought she was going to get the brakes beat off her because Cyborg has been the greatest female fighter of all time up until that point. And Amanda knocked her out in like 10 seconds. Wow. And she's an incredible person. She's a humble champion. And it's been an honor and a privilege to work with her and Kayla Harrison. So Kayla Harrison invited me to help her with her last fight where she won the PFL's women's championship belt and $1 million, which is pretty incredible. Yeah. And if you don't know, Kayla Harrison is the two-time women's Olympic gold champion, which is just incredible. And so to work with this level of athlete and to do what I love, has just been a huge blessing for me.
I mean, that's awesome. That's like rarefied air. I mean,
thank you.
Why would you be with them? You know what I mean? That's just what you do.
It's just been such a pleasure. And I always I work with a group called, I can do a lot of consulting and I do independent contracting. And one of the groups I work with is called The Program. And they're an incredible organization. If you look them up, they work with a lot of collegiate teams and corporate groups. And it's about team development and whatnot. And one of the things that they say that really hits home for me is I get to do this. Like every day that I open my eyes, like I get to make choices. I get to push myself. Like, so I've kind of like taken that to heart, is like, I get to do an incredible workout today. You know what I mean? And push myself past, to make myself better the next day. And I think everything's about perspective. So when you start looking at things from a different perspective or, whatnot, it can be really insightful.
And I totally agree with you. And I think it just makes all of us well-rounded when we have all these different outlets that we're pursuing and things that kind of make it come together. It's excellent. So we have a question that popped into the chat, However, let's transition to your academic pursuits, and then that question will make sense. So, Katie, we have you, but I'm going to ask the question of Kelsey first, and then we'll come back to that question. So, what motivated you to now, after I believe completing your military career, you decided to go into the marketing and public relations world? What motivated you to make that transition?
Okay, great question. So this goes back to JT. So I created this, I had a little bit of help. So let me go back to the whole Justin Timberlake story, how this all came about. Like I said, I wasn't really.
We put a pin in it, so we're going to take the pin out.
We put a pin, and we're there.
Okay.
So I wasn't like a huge NSYNC fan or anything, but one of my girlfriends told me I was studying for a sergeant's board, which is a meritorious promotion in the military. And you have to know all this military history along with knowing current events. And so the night before, I had 2 civilian roommates at the time, 2 women, and they're wonderful. And I asked them, hey, would you guys like to grab a glass of wine? And you guys kind of fill me in on like, let's talk about current events. And they're like, yeah, sure. So one of my girlfriends brings up this interview that they did with Justin for the Friends with Benefits movie with Mila Kunis. And the interviewer, and I didn't know at the time, the interviewer, you're supposed to have an outline of questions. I'm pretty sure this question wasn't on the outline because he kind of stepped outside and said, hey, Mila, you got invited to the Marine Corps ball by this sergeant in Afghanistan. Are you going to go? And she was like kind of blindsided. And Justin stepped in and was like, the Marine Corps ball, like he had heard about the Marine Corps ball, and he was like, oh, you're going to go to the Marine Corps ball. And I was watching this and I was like, oh, this is interesting. And she goes, well, what about you? Like, and he was like, they don't want me. They want you, like, do it for your country. And, he's from Tennessee and I'm pretty sure she's from Russia. Like she's not from here, but he's saying, do it for your country, do it for your country. And, talking to the camera about, we're going to make this happen. And I was so motivated because especially where I worked in the Marine Corps, it was like, you definitely put your money where your mouth is. And it just seemed like he wanted an invite to the Marine Corps ball and he didn't have one. And so I was like, the next day I was like, I need to create a video. And I knew I had one shot. We call it one shot, one kill. Okay. I knew I had one shot and that was my only opportunity. And I didn't want to be in the video alone because I totally didn't want to be like a stalker status. Yeah. Hey. So I managed to convince a couple of the incredible men that I worked with to just stand in the background for me. And I had one shot. We didn't even have the Marine Corps ball scheduled at the time. I just said the Marine Corps' birthday, which is November 10th. I invited him. I basically said, if you're going to call out my girl, Mila Kunis, well then, I'm going to call you out and you should come to the Marine Corps ball with me. And then if you can't, cry me a river, which is a little bit of that jab.
I love it. And it went viral, right?
And it went viral. And so now back to that question. So I'm a part of this process. I mean, my poor CEO at the time is having like celebrity gossip, all blowing up his phone. I mean, we're talking like 500,000 views in like a couple hours. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is so fascinating to me. And so the whole like background, I got to see this whole background of communication. And I was just fascinated by it. I had never even really, I had no understanding of public affairs or public relations and communications, internal and external. And I just became obsessed. I was like, this is so cool to see how this works on the other side. And that's why I wanted to focus my study at the University of Miami in the School of Communication.
And there you go. And so you see now how the journey has started and where it started, where it is now. And Katie, to your question, so Kelsey, Katie wants to know, how has your PR master's degree helped you to make a stronger communicator about your passions? Because I know the answer to this question, but you go ahead.
Tell me. Then tell me the answer.
No, I mean, think about what you were doing before we came on the call and how detailed and how you wanted things. I mean, come on, you could talk about it. Yeah.
Okay. So you're right. All right. So it's been a huge asset to my life. Like it's allowed me to, first of all, I do a lot of consulting as an independent contractor and it's wonderful. I started with a donut company, which who doesn't like donuts? You know what I mean? So that was pretty easy. But it allowed me to learn. It allowed me to see, you know, different industries. And I've been lucky enough to work with like groups like Titan Steel Structures, a total different industry than what I'm accustomed to, create communication plans and things like that for them. And then also I started to get back into my own industries that are like more close, near and dear to my heart, like veteran owned and operated companies, along with like I went to SHOT Show my last year, which is like an industry conference for our community a lot of the time. So it's I went this last year and the year before, which was extremely impactful for me. I mean, talk about opening doors and networking. There's just so much that you can do, I think, in this field. Like there's plenty of different, whether it's graphic design, internal, external communication, crisis communication, you know what I mean? Measurement, there is so much. And it's fascinating to me. And it's, you know, it's constantly evolving like many things. Yes. And so it's been just incredible for me to learn. And I miss my classes at the University of Miami, to be honest with you. Like one of my professors that had a huge impact on me was Dr. Stacks, and he's known in the PR communications field for measurement. And he's also an Army veteran. And I just, what's that?
I didn't know that about Dr.
You didn't? Oh, well, he actually, when I think a year before I graduated is when he retired. And so just incredible professors like yourself, like the fact that the University of Miami takes that extra step to find industry professionals that allow you to just not just think about what's going on right now, but to think about the future and also what's out in the real world has been tremendously impactful for me, and has been able to, you know, excel my career in terms of, you know, MMA or my Marine attributes. Different. I'm into a lot of different things.
No.
So it's allowed me. So it's allowed me to merge into this. Yeah, exactly. It's allowed me to like merge into these different industries and kind of like, you know, take foot where otherwise I wouldn't necessarily know these things. You know, I wouldn't understand like the do's and the don'ts, or like the industry standards in terms of communication. So it's been tremendous. It's been really, I'm super thankful for my education. And honestly, I finished my degree not that long ago, but I'm already like, I need to go back to school.
Yeah, another one, or my PhD, right? So,
absolutely.
So, you know what? We have another question that came in, and this is we're going to change the subject a little bit, but it's what you talked about before, which is one of your main passions of, you know, serving our country. And so, Shane, thank you for your question. He basically says thanks to you and for me for doing this. So, you're welcome, Shane. So his question is about advice. What advice would you give for someone who is thinking about serving in the future, especially with the state of affairs currently, and he's leaning towards the medical side of things? So what advice would you give Shane?
First of all, Shane, thanks for your question. And secondly, what just to even be considering at this time, at the state of what's going on with COVID-19, to even be considering the medical field, I think is it takes huge courage. And I think it's an honorable profession. I think that in terms of advice, I would, if I were you, I would look at, I don't know exactly what branch that you're looking at specifically, but any that have medical, I would write out the pros and cons of each, because you might be fixated on one and another might have something that was a little bit more advantageous or something that you're interested in as well. So look at the pros and cons of each. You might be surprised because we always have like Marines always like, you know, talk about the arm, like we always have like inner forces, like different armed forces have jokes with each other and things like that, but we're all a part of the same team, hands down. And so it doesn't matter if you're Navy or Air Force or Army, Marine Corps, whatever it is, you're in the same fight, you're a part of the same team. So look at all the options that they have to offer, and really take in consideration, you know, what your purpose is. And if you feel connected to going outside and doing something that you feel purposeful, that's greater than yourself in terms of self-sacrifice and for the greater good, I would highly encourage it. It's hard when I think a lot of veterans struggle with when you get out of the military is refinding that purpose, you know, because it's so, when you're active duty, it's so prevalent. You know, every day you strap on your boots, just like a lot of medical professionals right now, this is their time. You know what I mean? They're stepping into their greatness right now. This is what they trained for. This is what they went to school for. And that to me is, talk about a calling. It's just incredibly honorable, and it's incredibly selfless. So if your heart and mind is there, absolutely do it. But look at all your options. Look at all your options, because there might be something that you're not seeing, even whether it's armed forces or on the outside. So start to analyze everything and say, you know what? I'm leaning a little bit more toward here, and keep asking questions. See if you can find people who have done that career route and ask them what their best advice would be in that field. I hope that helps.
It wasn't even my question, but I think that was an awesome. You know what I'm saying? So I'm getting the signal that we need to get to the final question, which is probably the most pertinent and important to you. And that's this weekend, right? We're celebrating, or we're observing Memorial Day. And so tell us what that means, what we should be thinking about going into the weekend. And then, of course, what are some things that we can do to honor those who have fallen?
Absolutely. So Memorial Day is very different than Veterans Day. Memorial Day is about remembering the men and women who have given their life and made the ultimate sacrifice for our country and for our freedoms. And so it's sacred. It's very sacred. It's, if you can imagine, if you've had a family member who has passed or an animal that has passed, a feeling of loss is a very deep emotional feeling. And it's sometimes very hard to deal with, and not just on this time of the year, but throughout the year. And so my advice would be, a good thing to do for Memorial Day would be to find a list of those who have passed, who have made the ultimate sacrifice serving our country, and say their names aloud. Mm-hmm. Take a moment of silence and take an extra second and think about things in your life, little things that you can be thankful for. Think about the rights that we have in this country in comparison to other countries in the world. Think about things that we have access to in comparison to those who don't. And be sensitive to the feeling of loss. Maybe if you haven't experienced loss, you might not be able to relate so much, but I think everyone can kind of level with the fact that to have somebody that, especially, you know, parents that leave behind their kids, which is one of the hardest things for me to think about it. And it's common in our community. So, you know, think about those people, think about those families, think about the spouses, because that's not just Memorial Day, that's every day for them. So take a second to think about them, say their names aloud, and just think about the things that you're thankful for in this country that other countries don't necessarily have. That would be my best advice. And my favorite part, throughout the year, I love supporting both veteran-owned and operated companies that produce things like coffee, like Invader Coffee I mentioned. Go Condition One is a bar supplement company that's incredible. Marine Corps veteran owns and operates that as well. And then also, I've done a lot of research in nonprofits. One of my favorite nonprofits that if you're at all interested in supporting is Operation 300. And and in the comments, these are gonna be listed. What they do is they offer a camp for the children of those who have passed away that have served our country. For example, here's what their mission statement says: a message to all Gold Star wives of those who have lost their husbands. Since 2012, Operation 300 has been hosting week-long mentorship adventure camps for Gold Star children, those who have lost a parent. We believe when a man or woman offers their life for our freedom, the least we can do is care for those left behind. During our camps, we pair your children with a father-age mentor and do our best to give them a weekend of fun, laughter, and bonding they will never forget. In addition, we bring the military widow to beautiful West Palm Beach, Florida. Well-deserved, much-needed retreat. The founders of the Operation 300 are a Gold Star family, and honor your sacrifice. We give anything to our past have never been forced to cross. We love and pray you will find comfort moving forward beside us. So this whole organization is dedicated to their son. I actually met Karen Vaughn in honor of Aaron Vaughn, who passed away serving our country. So this is an incredible organization. And I think their camps for this year, because of COVID, have been, I don't know if they're still going on or whatnot, but you can still donate and you can still support. They have apparel and whatnot. So if you're interested at all in that, I would highly recommend it. Also, another organization that I've been a part of, one of their programs is called, or a couple of their programs, is called 22 Kill. I highly encourage anyone who's interested to look at their website as well. They have some really incredible programs. I had the pleasure of helping some spouses, some widows, that have passed serving our country, their husbands. We did like a shooting event, and they got to like shoot out of a helicopter and things like that. And it was just like something that they had, never done before. And it was really fun. And so there's organizations like that really show that we're in this together. And it's not just the veteran community and the spouses and the families. It's America. It's American people who support each other and who are united in this, because it's not us who decides to go to war. It's our leadership. And what we're doing is we're doing the best that we can in terms of protecting and defending the ones that we love and people that we don't even, and people that you don't even know. So it's really important to be educated on that. And I think that these organizations will help define that. Another organization, I'm just going to go through the list if that's okay. Do I have a minute, Winston?
Yeah, there's like, okay, we're getting close to the end. So I want to make sure you get all the list in. So
Okay. Thank you. Okay, I'll be quick. Okay, so another organization, one of my girlfriends who's a combat veteran, which I have quite a few that are incredible women and men that do some incredible things. Her name is Leslie Van Drew, and she has a nonprofit called Heroes Outdoor Therapy. Incredible organization. I've done trips with them, and she really fills the gap. So you can go on her website and check out what they do in terms of their mission, connecting veterans with the outdoors and different elements, which I also think help prevent from veteran suicide and whatnot, help the transition. Also, there's a link to the veterans tab on Outward Bound. I took a whole group of veterans when I was working at NSU to do a retreat. That was really wonderful. One of the best programs I've ever been a part of is Zach Brown created his own camp called Camp Southern Ground. Me and my dear friends, I met 3 other women there that I consider my sisters, and talk about mentors and just amazing women. It was the first group that we did a cohort with both men and women. I learned more about myself during that week period than I've ever known. And it's an incredible transition assistance. And I highly suggest looking into them. Also, there's a link to the Mission Continues, Team Rubicon. These are some of my favorite nonprofits, incredible missions. Mission Continues and Team Rubicon are great because they also involve, I feel like it's like half civilian, half military. And so it's super fun, the people that you get to connect with. And it's usually by region. So you get to make these networks and these connections to where you're close to, which is extremely impactful. I mentioned Go Condition 1, veteran owned and operated business. Also, there's the Recon and Sniper Foundation that's listed. You can read about their mission. And they help service members, veterans, and their families. Forest Blue, I've done work with them, incredible mission. If you're into conservation and whatnot, especially in the ocean and the coral reef, you definitely need to look into them. They're down in Marathon in the Keys. And then the last one that I have listed here is Final Salute, that's where Miss Veteran America, and they support homeless women veterans. And so yeah, that's just a few of my favorites, but there's probably more that I didn't mention, but I just want to get those all out there. So
thank you for the list. And again, they should be in the chat there, in the comments, I mean. So look at the comments and please support some of them. And John, hopefully that helps answer the question. We had a question from John about what he could be doing to support things post-COVID. So you had a whole list of things right there. So Kelsey, want to thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Winston. It's been such a pleasure. And thanks to everyone who came and listened in and supported. We really appreciate it. It was really
nice. And thank you, all of you who have joined in for today's Coffee with the Cane. And we invite the University of Miami community to share how they're staying connected while social distancing using hashtag Canes Social Distancing. And remember to tune in to the next time at 5 p.m. on Thursday, June 4th for our next episode of Coffee with a Cane. And final coffee cheers. And of course, go Canes.
Yay, go Canes. Yay.